And hello, everyone. Welcome to PL Straight, the Dragon Kingdom Saga. We are here, brought together for an incredible event, mainly because of an incredible person, an incredible author. We are here to discuss Song of the Mysteries, the final book in the Wars of Light and Shadow, a series that, for most of us, needs no introduction. It is a seminal series by an iconic author. That author is Janny Wurts, who we're graced to have us with today. Also, we have two marvelous guests who have been awesome supporters of this series and certainly has, in my opinion, helped shine a light on a series that is unfortunately has been underrated in the past. I think that's changing. And thanks to people such as Blaise and Niko, specifically, with all of their hard work, they've done so much to promote this series and shine a light on this series that we believe that it's finally obtaining some of the prominence that it deserves. So hats off to Blaise and Niko. I also wanted to, before we let everyone introduce themselves, starting with our esteemed main guest, Janny Wurts, I'd like to thank Angie, the bookaholic brown nymph. She is the one who was hosting all of the previous lives for all the books in Janny's series. And, you know, without her, we would not be here today doing this. So, yes, we're here for book 11, but Angie's here in spirit. And she's the one that led us all the way starting back with the deep dive into book 1, Curse of the Mystery, and through all the way through book 10. So hats off to Angie. Angie, if you watch this later on, thank you so much for all you've done to help promote this series as well. Thanks for being a phenomenal person and human and friend. And we'll start with introductions. And of course, we will begin with the author herself, the wonderful and immensely talented Janny Wurts.
Well, I still have to continue the round of applause for Angie. Her channel still exists. She was recently came back onto YouTube. You can check out all the prior discussions. She is the first YouTuber to go through the entire series in discussion, one thing at a time. And Niko was the close second. So I owe it to Blaise, Niko, AP Canavan, Philip Chase, Talking Story, everybody who is reading the series right now, because you guys were the pioneers. So
yeah. Here. Niko, of course, phenomenal booktuber. Would love to have him, say a few words. Niko?
I'm okay, I guess, but yeah, so I'm Niko from Niko's Book Reviews. And yeah, I second it so much because I'd read the first book and I think, started the second book. But it's Angie inviting me to join along. I'm like, oh, I better really get a move on and like really get into. So it's very possible that I would not have read the series as quickly as I ended up doing without. So that was great there. But yeah, I talk enough about Wars of Light and Shadow, apparently, that my big reveal in my new top 10 series of all time, that it was the new #1. I literally had some people comment like, yeah, I would have been shocked if it wasn't Wars of Light and Shadow after how much I talk about it. So it wasn't much of a surprise, but well deserved in its place. So it's been a great time. Really enjoyed my experience with getting to talk through the books and with reading through all of the books as well. And so it's been fantastic.
Very well said, Niko. And we are so grateful for you. And as Janny said, you've been so instrumental in promoting this book. And thank you for all you do for the entire community. And of course, what can we say about Blaise? Blaise was the one who introduced me to this series, so I owe him a debt of gratitude that cannot be repaid. Blaise is, as his moniker implies, such a champion of books that don't necessarily get the spotlight they deserve. And it's almost inconceivable when you think of an author of Janny's caliber and esteem that wasn't happening. But Blaise was one of the people making sure that it did. So Blaise is phenomenal, such an amazing human. He's done so much supporting me personally as an author and so many others. So Blaise, we're so grateful for you and thank you for coming.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I also want to give a shout out to Angie for organizing this whole read along. It's been a lot of fun remembering my experience when I first read these books, reading it a second time, gaining more knowledge and more understanding as to what I'm going through, what you guys are going through as a person who knows what happened previously. I first started this series 5 years ago during the heart of COVID and fell in love with the series. Janny and I became friends and we became such close friends. I was actually able to be a beta reader for Song of the Mysteries. And as soon as I finished that book, I knew that once it became public, it was just going to rock the book industry. And people are only now starting to catch on to how brilliant the series is with all the read-alongs happening. And I'm so thankful that everything is coalescing as it is. But excited to be here. Love this series. Is my number one favorite series of all time. And happy to discuss the ending. And boy, do we have a lot to discuss.
We do, but also I want to thank Blaise because we've been swapping reading lists, and he's turned me on to some really, really good reads, and I hope I have exhumed some that have been forgotten. Giving you a list. Keep doing that, Blaise, because there are a lot of people who definitely don't have the courage to dig up books nobody's ever heard of and talk about them and bring them to light. It's a huge thing that you're doing.
Thank you so much. I will not stop.
Yeah, we second that. Please don't stop, please. Before we move on, I'm just going to quickly, there are so many people that have been phenomenal supporters of Janny, to her work, have been fans, even if they haven't read the series, have certainly, promoted it, and boosted it on social media. There are all kinds of things because, of course, Janny is such an incredible human, is so deserving. But even if they haven't read the series, they're also aware, though, too, just how important this series is to fantasy literature. Now, someone who has definitely read the series, and long before any of us, latched on to Janny and the Wars of Light and Shadow, this particular individual, Shivapo, was one of the people who was out there shouting to the rooftops about Janny and her incredible writing and her phenomenal work. So big hats off to Chibipo, another incredible human being and fantastic supporter in the writing community. Chibipo, I heard a little birdie told me that you also might be straying over to the dark side and maybe working on something yourself. So we're all going to be bothering you until we find out what that is and get to know when that's coming out, so we can give you back some of the love that you've given all of us, and especially people such as Janny. So
we also have to tribute Chibipo for coining the term transcendental fantasy with regard to Wars of Light and Shadow, and there are other books that fall into that category, but Chibipo came first. And it was this series that came first with that. So hats off to that.
Definitely. Hats off to you, Chibipo. Thank you so much for all you do. You are absolutely incredible.
It is a descriptor.
In the chat, we have the phenomenal John A. Douglas, brilliant author and booktuber himself. Check out John A., his book, Black Crown.
Black Crown. Black Crown.
I have that on my shelf. We'll be definitely getting to it in 2025. Check out John's YouTube channel. He also hosted a big party, which we had the fortune to be in attendance with Janny and the rest of us regarding the big Song of the Mysteries launch. So thank you, John, for doing that and for everything you do, John. You are awesome. Really appreciate it. And of course, no stranger to the community,
Hey,
Andrew, another beautiful human being, someone we all love. Andrew's Wizardly Reads, check out his channel. Dear friend of all of ours, particularly buddy of Niko's. Andrew is someone who tirelessly works to boost others and uplift others in the community. And, we know his worth. And Andrew, thank you so much for coming by and supporting my friend. And he also notes he is halfway through Curse of the Mystery.
The downhill slide will start very, very soon.
No turning back point.
Yeah, it's over for you now, Andrew. You're hooked. So Hope you're enjoying the read, my
He's
friend.
probably right at the tipping point.
I've
John,
greatly enjoyed as he shared thoughts with me as he goes along, and he's already like theorizing like long term and everything too. So it's been really
Oh,
fun.
I would love to be a fly on the wall and see that.
Just a word to Andrew. Everything I was trying to predict when I first read Curse.
I always tell people, I'm like, I can't confirm or deny, but keep paying attention, keep latching on to small details, and you might get something, you might not, but yeah.
That's awesome. We have Heidi in the chat. Heidi, thanks so much for coming by here for the non-spoiler talk, if any. Thank you. And again, I'll just keep putting up comments, but we're gonna get into impressions and thoughts, non-spoiler impressions and thoughts. That's how we will start off. So I'd like to hear from Blaise and Niko what their overall impressions. If it's hard to encapsulate because this is such a momentous book, and as the final book in this series, I mean, it's really hard, I know, to put your thoughts together. But I am curious, and I'm sure Janny is too, to know. First, we'll go with Niko. What were your overall impressions of the final Curse of Mystery, the finale of Wars of Light and Shadow?
And it was just getting my hands on it was one of the coolest things too. Having being able to have an advanced copy and holding that book was just amazing. And then I barely did anything for like the week I was reading it. I stayed up way too late every single night reading. I took a day off work so I could read the entire day because I couldn't put the book down, and just was going. It really is, and like the transcendent fantasy moniker is a really great one because that's just what it does. And for me, it was so much that like not only was it an incredibly satisfying ending, not only does it do things that seem to fit and are just like some things you want, some things maybe not so much, but it also was just such a full circle moment, despite the vast scope of the series and everything you've explored and everything that's done. It all comes back, and there's still things we're seeing from the very first book where it's coming back now, and really in such a satisfying way, seeing how everything went together, seeing everything that happens, and just the sheer amount of stuff packed into it. Like, it's not a small book, granted, but the sheer amount of things that happen, and like you have one climax and you still have hundreds of pages left, and you're like, this is crazy. How is it going to keep going from here? And then it does. It does so big. And just, yeah, it was everything I could have wanted. And even the things I didn't know I wanted. And I was enthralled from start to finish, which is exactly what you want. And then it was really hard to pick up another book after finishing it. So I'm just like, all I wanted to do was just read it again after finishing it, to be honest. But
yeah, huge. When we get to me, huge book hangover. Probably the biggest book hangover I've ever had after reading Songs and Mysteries. I couldn't read anything else, and I certainly didn't want to read anything else that wasn't Janny Wurts. So it took a while to readjust and rebalance after that in a good way. This is only a compliment to Janny.
Oh, yeah.
So when I say that, that's really what I needed. Blaise, so impressions. What about you, my friend?
So, in short, Song of the Mysteries is nothing short of a complete and utter triumph for Janny and her entire writing career. And I feel like my reading experience was different from anybody else's because being a beta reader, I didn't get to binge it and go through chapter by chapter. Janny would send me a chapter a day, basically. And then as I was reading it, I'm like, oh, but I want the next one. I want the next one. I want the next one. But it was like that for like basically a month, and I'm writing down notes, and Jay and I are talking about it. So that was one reading experience, and that completely blew me away as I was putting out theories of where I think it was going, but it actually was this, and seeing the callbacks. And then when the audiobook came out and I was listening to it, I caught things that I missed even on the beta read, and Colin Mace just completely nailed the audio, and I loved reading it again for a second time. And now rereading the series from beginning to end has just been one of the greatest experiences of my life, and I picked up on so much, especially the callbacks to Curse. There's callbacks to like almost every single book. There's a callback to, and if you really like paying attention, you'll gain so much more from it. It's a series that will forever be like top of the charts for me, and Janny has forever ruined reading for me because nothing can ever compare to her writing and prose. So, and I feel like I don't have time for anything else that is at least on that level. So, congratulations, Janny, and I can't wait to talk about this in the spoiler section.
I think in some ways it was a boon that I had this war going with my publisher, because I was not given the liberty to have too much space. I wasn't allowed to do the 1,600 page tome. So there was a point where I was warned when Peril's Gate was happening that you're not selling enough to pay for the cost of these books. So I had to be very, very economical. And when it came to the finale, I knew I was going to be under the axe for coming into a length where they were going to say, we can't publish this as one volume. And it had to be one volume. So yeah, it came in at under 100,000 words, which so many epic fantasies don't. And now I went through the bends to make that happen. But now I look back on that economy of space to be a gift.
Well, Janny, I mean, you are, as you know, we all believe that your writing talent is undeniable, but you're the kind of person you are. If it's possible, you're an even better person. And I'm not boasting here. You feel like you're part of a very select and exclusive club to get to be in your orbit. You were so generous and kind to ensure that we all got advanced reader copies of this book. What really struck me is that I realized that by being in that orbit, by getting a chance to read your work, by getting a chance to comment on your work, by getting a chance to have this copy and to read this book, the end of an iconic series, I really felt the weight of being part of history. When Jordan passed away and The Wheel of Time was finished by another author, when we weren't there when Tolkien finished The Lord of the Rings, when some of these iconic series, perhaps if some of us weren't reading fantasy at the time, we weren't cognizant of what it meant when Realm of the Eldrings was finished, or when Malazan was finished, etc. But I very much felt the weight of, I am part of history, getting to read the final installment of this book ahead of time, because this book is going to go down as part of a series in the pantheon of the greatest fantasy series of all time. So I felt extremely humbled and privileged and overwhelmed and overawed with that feeling, because this book is the culmination, I know, of so much hard work and so much dedication by you, and the craft that's displayed. There is nothing like this. I said in my video of top series of all time, I couldn't even conceive a time where a book like series like Lord of the Rings wouldn't be at the top, right? And then everything else would fall in somewhere after. But that feeling of just knowing, as you start reading through book 4, 5, 6, 7, that there is going to be nothing like this. I mean, I look at someone like Niko, who from what I know of him, nothing was going to replace Wheel of Time. I'm sure that wasn't on his radar that anything ever could have replaced Wheel of Time, but your series did. And that's kind of impact, Janny, your writing has on people. That's how incredible it is. That's how big and important it is to not just fantasy, but the literary world. So thank you for giving us this. Of course, you have, for the last few years, you have surpassed everyone and easily become my favorite author. You are the author of my favorite book of all time. You're the author of my favorite fantasy series of all time and my favorite series of all time. And I cannot conceive of a time that that's going to change. So thank you for the gift of this, Janny, and the blessing of getting to know you and becoming your friend. And I will always remember when I read this book, because I feel like in my life, there's definitely watershed moments, having children, having grandchildren, getting married, things like that. And this was a watershed moment. So thank you for that.
Well, I finished what I set out to do, but also at the end, I was surrounded by a very select group of people who I consider family. And some of those people in that circle are here tonight.
Well, we are grateful for you, Janny. And before we get into non-spoilery thoughts, because I think we're also anxious just to jump to that, I'm just going to go back quickly to Heidi. And Heidi puts up a question, and yes, maybe Janny can discuss her special edition omnibus for the novellas.
Well, actually, the plan is if I can write fast enough, because fitting stories back into the history is so complicated, it's really tough. I can write a whole novel in the time it takes me to write a short for one of these, but the plan is to group them into time periods. So I project 3 omnibuses actually, but if it takes me too long to produce them, I'll pack them into one and be done with it. But yeah, I'm working on a sequel to The Gallant right now. I got about 60 pages along, and it's ramping towards where things get really hot. And there will be callbacks to the major series, certain things I left that are mentioned in the big series, but they're never defined. And so all of these stories are going to pick up little loopholes like that, where there was a hole or a comment made of something that happened in history, and you'll get to see that unfold. So with any luck, I will pick up a special edition of some kind and release it also as an ebook. So hopefully we'll have a paper edition too, but it all depends on me getting it assembled so it all fits together.
Wow, I think we're all pretty excited hearing this. I think we're trying to contain ourselves, but I think we're all pretty excited hearing this.
I'd like to see one where it's extraplanetary, way back in prehistory, origins of certain things that wound up on Athera. And I'd like to see one surrounding the Rising in 5018. And I'd like to see a trilogy of novellas surrounding Varian, if I can pull it off, but it's a lot of work. And I've got another novel under submission, so if that thing splashes and takes, then I'm going to have my hands full.
Well, that is phenomenal news for the science fiction fantasy world. That's phenomenal news for all of us who are your fans. So we cannot wait, Janny. Bring it on is all I have to say. Bring it on. I'm slowly accumulating your entire backlist. Niko, I believe, has up to date and has read, I think, everything by you. I'm not sure where Blaise is. I think he's close to, or if not, he hasn't done it already. But I'm still behind, and I have at least 6 or 7 books to catch up. So that just makes me encouraged, because I know, God grant me a very long life, I'm going to get to be reading Janny Wurts for a long, long time. And that makes me very, very happy. So
see, I'm even more excited for the new stuff because I've read the existing solo stuff. But yeah, I have my mostly back here the collection. So the only thing is, I don't think there is a hardcover for Sorcerer's Legacy, is there?
No, there's a trade paperback that was released in Britain with a new cover. So there is a large format, but no, there was no hardback for that one.
Now I'm probably gonna have to try and find that.
It's in print. You just have to order it from some outlet that brings in books from Britain.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, because I have this one.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I have that one.
Oh,
yeah.
this. Okay, so I do have that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I have that one. Yeah, that same cover. So, quickly, Nick Friedel. Hey, Nick. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate you stopping by. He does pose a question: are they going to finish up the series in audio, Janny?
Nick, beat on them and ask them, because I have no answer.
So, Nick, HarperCollins.
Okay, HarperCollins in Britain, in London. Harper Voyager is the one that owns the rights. So, Dogpile.
Yeah, get typing, Nick. You have your marching orders. Get typing. Okay, so I know we're all chomping at the bit to get into spoiler sections. So I just want to put it out there for those of you who joined mostly to support Janny, or you have got up to a certain point in the series, but you haven't gotten as far as the final book, Song of the Mysteries, this is your chance to, unfortunately, back out, come back and watch the replay after you've read Song of the Mysteries, because now we're going to get into spoilers. And of course, you don't want to be spoiled on one of the greatest books of all time, the finale of the greatest series of all time.
You don't want to be spoiled.
You don't want to be spoiled. So please, 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 I beg you, stop here, back out. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you later, because now the four of us are going to delve into the spoiler section. So I'm going to open it up to Blaise. Janny gave us the countdown. And Blaise, I'm sure you have some burning questions. Perhaps, I know obviously you have ongoing discussions with Janny, just as we all do. However, is there anything you'd like to put out there? Questions, comments in terms of spoilers about this book?
Okay, so we're in spoilers section now. Janny, you killed me with Terrence. That his ending and how he went through all the suffering and the pain, and seeing Jarrett, it just broke me. But I love the character. I love the callback to one of my favorite characters in the whole series. And I just love what you did with it. And it was a perfect ending for him. And it's still so crushing. I read it twice, and it pains me every time I read it. But I just loved what you did with that. And I was not expecting for the series, and we'll talk about specific things later, how fast this book was. The pacing was like nonstop, nail biting every single chapter. And compared to every other book in the series, which was like slow build up to like the big climax and then let the pieces fall where they may, it was just every single chapter. And it was just a craft that I wish more authors had the craft to do.
That's what you want from a finale, though.
Oh yeah,
that is what you want from a
That's
finale.
what I loved about it. It was so gut punch after gut punch after gut punch. It'll never. I don't think I'll never read another book that'll top it. So, but we'll get to more.
Well, I would never say never. Hopefully, this would inspire other epic fantasy authors to do the same thing. But it was, I'll tell you this, hundreds and hundreds of nights of insomnia to make that Chinese puzzle be that compacted.
Wow.
Yeah. So other authors take it as a challenge to.
We do.
We stand on the shoulders of giants, and if you don't throw the ball further down the court, you haven't delivered anything. And I said, this book not only is an arc finish, it is the series finish. It has to top every single thing that came before, and it has to reveal new things about every single thing that came before. And if it didn't do that, the idea went in the trash.
Well, Janny, you succeeded. All of us authors, we the ones who read your work, and 90% of those who've read your work that are authors are fans, and we all feel like if and as we progress, we are standing on your shoulders. You're one of those giants for us, and we're all striving. I will never achieve a Janny Wurts level.
Don't ever say never. You don't know.
I say never because that is how I feel. That is essentially, the pedestal I put you on. But that doesn't mean I'm not striving. That doesn't mean I'm not striving for that. I'm striving for that level, right, in my own way.
I hope somebody raises the bar, because I pushed it as high as I was capable. I hope somebody comes along and raises the bar, because that'll stretch me on my next book and my next one and my next one. That's the whole idea.
The way I look at it too, and I commented about this, I did my new top 10 series update this year, and there were a lot of changes. And I feel like you could look at it as like, oh, your list must not be good if it's always changing. But I'm like, no, I'm always trying to find the best series and read them. So it's so exciting to realize that, like, wow, I've read so many great things in the last couple of years. And, there's so many other authors out there. And then, Janny, you've inspired, I'm sure countless authors over the years, but even today, there's I know people very specifically who have been inspired by your work too, and it's just I hope somebody tops what you're doing. It's going to be real hard
That's
to do,
the point.
but I hope somebody does, because I want to read that book. If somebody
Yeah.
manages it, I want to read that book.
Yes.
Yeah, me too. And you know what? I didn't think that as an author in my 50s, writing my first fantasy series in my 50s, that I would read another author that would become one of my influences as I write the series.
That's the thing, to pop that nostalgia bubble of the things that really slammed you when you were 20. If you can break that bubble, and I tried. I put everything I had into it. I won't succeed with some people, but the fact that I have it all is like, yes.
Niko, spoiler comments first. Spoiler comments about that you'd like to get across about Song of the Mysteries.
Oh God, where do I start? I feel like, so not to 100% jump to the very end. Although I'm such an Arathon fan, so this was such a, obviously a big Arathon book, because it's the last one, and just like the classic, like Arathon going rogue, doing his own thing, nobody knows. I was actually just recently I was talking to Joanna about Trader's Knot, where there's kind of a Arathon going rogue. There's a lot of stuff in there, and I'm like,
She ain't seen
gosh, I'm
nothing
like,
yet.
yeah, it just reminded me, like every time I talk about it, I want to reread. But so a lot of the Arathon stuff, but so the non maybe super obvious thing that for me was such a huge thing and a huge part of what I loved is because the world in general that we continue to blow up, and we see way more with the dragons. We learn so much more about the dragons and everything in here as well. But the really big thing that just stands out so much, to pick one, is the Black Rose prophecy, which we have known since basically day one. Like, we've known this prophecy. It is there. We think we know what it means. The Fellowship certainly thinks they know what it means, and have everything that they've done in some ways is all informed toward that. And nope, nobody got it. Nobody had it right at all, because and like the whole plot line with Arathon just renouncing his royal status and like, no, I don't want to be king, and seeing what the kingship that it actually meant to embrace was different the entire time. That was such an insane moment, because it really was, at least for me, not what I expected. I did not see that coming, but it wasn't like, where'd that come from? It's like, that makes every piece fit together so well. So just to come with that revelation, that was just so amazing. And that's been something I've loved with the book, is how much it builds, how much it circles back, how much it calls back, and does it so well. There's never anything that comes up and you're like, that doesn't make sense, that doesn't fit, where'd that come from? It just, everything is there, and you're like, oh my gosh, that explains so much. And just, yeah, I loved that I loved so many things, but the Black Rose prophecy was just phenomenal for me. So
yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, Niko, about that. There's so many things we could talk about, but and I Niko and Blaise's insights here have been phenomenal. But I just want to say, me, you all know me well. You're my friends. You know what I write about. I love me. Usually in any book, I love the dirtiest, messiest, most flawed, most nominally horrible character in a book, and that's my barometer for how well and how good a book is, because you can tell an author's craft. For me, yes, there's authors that write fantastic, good characters. I'm not saying it's easy to write a good character. I'm not saying that. But when you write a character that's so complex and potentially so unlikable, and yet, so I have to represent, we all know that I'm Team Blaise here. We all know that. And I'm going to say, though, that, Janny said this one time, that it's rare. The book she loves, it's rare when an author at this point in her career and reading, when an author can surprise you about an outcome, especially for a character. And I did not see the extent to which Lysier would face his faults when the moment of truth was there, accept responsibility for actions to a point. And, I never saw I won't even use the word redemption. I won't use that word. I'd like to hear what Janny thinks about Lysier's arc specifically. but I will use the word some degree of humility. Those are the words that I will use. Which is something that I was astounded, even still at this point. Like I said, like Janny, I'm 55 years old. It's hard to surprise me now in most books, but she got me, because that is an arc that, even though the signs were there, and you look back, and I kind of already started a soft reread of the series, I was not expecting that from Lysier. I thought Lysier's arc was, he was almost completely irredeemable based on some things he did. But that wasn't what Janny wrote. And I think that was just absolute brilliance. I think that was brilliance. Janny, I guess my question to you specifically about that is, do you believe in redemption? And did Lysier get it?
My belief is complex. I think we stand at the center of a circle, and around the edge of that circle is everything we encounter of human nature, from the good to the bad, to the ugly, to the conceivably irredeemable. And what do we identify with on that circle at any given moment? And when we identify with something, we're drawn to it. We're drawn off our center toward it. Lysier was a man that had incredible gifts and incredible flaws. And the flaws were greater than he could throw off, because justice answers to logic. And logic can reshape almost anything to make it fit. It's the seed of fanaticism. And the minute you believe something absolutely, you become the tool of whatever fits that belief. And so that the temptation for him to do good by fitting that belief, by binding people to him by their flaws, fed his arrogance till the very moment where the crone casts him into Rockfell and he succumbs to the Mistwraith. And he knows, because she told him the only way out of this is to betray everything. To betray your brother, everything. To let him down at the very moment when he needs you the most. And he had the courage to do that. So the same quality that drove him to destruction was the quality that drove him to be strong enough to do what he had to do in that moment. And it forced him to come to terms. But whether he could ever outgrow those flaws completely, we're all placed in circumstances that test us again and again and again. And sometimes our qualities are the heroic quality that will carry the situation. And sometimes, like the Cibridian, our very strength are our downfalls. And it depends where we identify from that center, where we get pulled off our center. But the sun always rises. And so what we do next is what matters. What we do now is what matters, not what we were or what we think we'll become. It's what we do now that matters. We lost you there. Did that answer your question? We can't hear you.
You're on mute.
I sorry, I apologize. I couldn't get the button. I apologize, and very well said, Janny. Thank you for answering that. You certainly did answer that. And Lysier, just to let you know, has now ascended into my top 5 fantasy characters of all time. He is, as I said, you all know me well. I love my flawed, messed up characters. And I said, it's a rare skill that can write a character.
He was a flat bitch to write, let me tell you.
Yeah, but that's a testament, Janny, to how skilled an author you are. That's a testament. So, Blaise, any more spoiler-related things you'd like to ask, comment on?
Sure. With regards to Lysier and his arc and how it ended, when I first read it, going back, what was it, like 3-4 years ago, it was this reread that I went on with you guys, where I specifically looked for the little hints in each consecutive book that gave just a little bit of insight into Lysair and what was really going on, like inside his mind. And I forget which book it was. It was Trader's Knot or Storm Fortress, where he told Sultan like that he knows that he's cursed. And what I remember reading that for the first time, I'm like, oh, something else is going on here. And then just seeing the little pieces add up to what ultimately transpired in Rockfell with him and Arathon. I couldn't have imagined like how Janny, you conceived all of that and just wrote it out for each consecutive book. It was just brilliance. Besides the soul crushing thing of Terrans and how that happened, the journey of from beginning to end in this whole series, especially in songs that just completely did a 180 for me, is Dakar's journey. So because in Curse, he's just this arrogant mage, will say, and he doesn't like Arathon, the whole relationship that they have. But he's very powerful. He's with Ascendere, and he's trying to learn things, and the things that he has to put on his shoulders, especially during the ending, when none of the 7 are really around to help him, and he has to combat this dragon at the tower and basically save it from collapsing. I just thought, I never expected that that's where his arc was going to go, and the ultimate ending where he becomes Sethfir's apprentice. I just love that for him, because I never thought that character would just warm my heart in such a fantastic way. But no,
He's still Dakar. He's still Dakar.
He's
It's
still
a nice
Dakar,
hour.
but he's more heroic now than he's just ever been. Just gotta get through all the minutia and all the crap that he comes along in all the way. Was that, I just wanted to ask, like, Dakar's arc throughout all 11 books, and especially in songs, was that like something you knew from the beginning that you wanted with him? Because he's a side character essentially, but he takes on such a prominent role in this finale.
Well, I saw it coming because Davien saw it coming.
That's right.
He said it would take 1,000 years to mold a diamond, but that it would happen. It would take a long, long time. And in fact, that the 7 wouldn't dare take on Arathon because it was too likely, he was too sharp a tool, too likely to slip. But the little finger of Mercury through the whole series that everybody misses unless they really look for it is the crones. And all of the people who read this book and go, oh, it's so male oriented and the women don't have any power. And it's like the power walks very, very softly. But yeah, the crone is behind how much of it. If you go back to volume 1, you'll see she's been busy for a long time, even before the series began. She's been busy.
That was again one of the most mind-blowing things, is that I'm reading the last book in this huge series and I'm still finding out new things about the first book that make it even better. It's it's a difficult thing to do, but many authors can do, where each book kind of builds, and that's what you want to accomplish. But to do it over a series like this and to still have these things, and it's like, I know, Janny, you've said many times in these streams, like, it's all there right on the page, you don't have the context. But like, the degree of things that are just hiding in plain sight, and I theorized about all kinds of things that ended up being entirely wrong as well. But there was, it's just, there's so much, and that's what gives the series 2 such rereadability. I'm gonna have to see, because I don't know if I have the strength to not join the current buddy read that's going on right now.
Do it. You'll add a great deal to it.
Yeah, I've been joining in all the chats. I've had
Yeah.
to. I'm already, in way too many Discords, but I've had to join. But when Curse came out, I just would listen to the audiobook periodically. I wasn't like listening to the whole thing, but just because I'm like, I need a little hit of Wars of Light and Shadow to go back and go in there. And so I over time probably listened to it a few times, and I actually I didn't quite finish in time for this, but I was listening to Song of the Mysteries on audio to refresh for this, and I'd get to that, I'm like, oh yeah, it's good because I want to bring that part up. Yeah, I know this part, and so it was so great. But just all of the little things, and then as I've talked to people who are reading it for the first time, and there's just so many things, and they'll say this, and I'm just like, it's amazing how many things come around. And just for me, it's somebody who's so focused on world building, but also the ability to have something be endlessly rereadable, which this absolutely qualifies for. It's so hard to write something that's going to be satisfying the first time and even more satisfying on each successive read. And it's just, it blows me away with all of those things, all the things coming full circle, and just the bigger story in general and how much it is there. Because I commented about how there's nothing that really just comes out of nowhere, but it's a series.
It doesn't, but yeah, it
Yeah.
was designed for rereading. It was designed
Yeah.
to move with the decades that you live. So if you read it at 20, it's a different story at 40. It's a different story at 50. It's a different story at 70. It's designed to move the needle depending on your life experience. But one of the ways that the final volume evolved was I said, I got this mess of pickup sticks. And when it comes to finishing this out, I'm not allowed to introduce anything new. I got to recombine what's already there. I can't pull it out. And I find that so many series that are written, they just sprawl. They keep adding. This one, I kept reconcentrating what was already there. So what was added was more perspective and more perspective and more perspective. And that's how it was done. Was all the perspective had to be there pretty much from the ground floor. There's a couple little things that are only lightly brushed on or not at all. And one of the things was even edited out. The mention of necromancy was taken out of the first book. It was there, but the editor said, and I said, well, that's a pretty minor point. We can afford to let that one go. In a way, I regret it because it was just a mention. But trying to fit it all in and see that far ahead, it could only be done by putting 20 years of planning before the first book was written.
Well, then that necromancy sure came back hard later on. So
it was always there, and it was always there in the history. But I did have an actual mention of it in volume 1 that got edited out.
Wow. Okay. Well, in my mind, of all the chilling impressions, the things that just make you go, oh, like literally grabbing your face. Oh my God. Like the necromancy, that whole plot involving Erathon and Erathon's efforts to destroy the necromancers. That entire plot was just, I will never forget that particular plot for as long as I live. That was one of the plots in all the fantasy books I've read that was just stunning, shocking, just gave you chills. It's
not a pretty subject, so if you're gonna horrify, let's do it.
Yeah, you went for it, Janny. You want that almost in a way like a cosmic horror feeling. Oh yeah, you got it. I want to say about it just in terms of my a couple things in terms of my overall impressions. I think there's a couple things that stand out for me. So reading the shorts, especially the Decoy, Reigns of Destiny, Child of Prophecy, and reading the series, I was always hoping. So the good guy part of me, if one exists, was always hoping for some level of understanding, finding hopefully, a hope for the future of cooperation and collaboration and healing from all the horrors and atrocities in terms of the war between the clan and the townsfolk. I was hoping and praying that at some point there would be some healing, a way forward. I didn't see one necessarily during, if you consider what's gone on, but throughout human history, we do have an amazing capacity to reconcile, potentially find common ground, heal, find forgiveness, move forward. And, basically, of course, and Blaise talked about Terran's sacrifice and how utterly heartbreaking it was. Utterly just, I was bawling, but at the same time, knowing what it meant, knowing that paved the way for a possible way forward, right, between those two people. So it wasn't in vain, and that is something that really, really stood out to me about. And of course, it wasn't Terrence alone. I'm just saying that that really stood out to me. Janny in the book. And I think the other thing I really want to comment on is, there's two things. One, because Sullivan is one of maybe my second favorite character. His progeny, Daliana, getting some measure of happiness. At the end. Obviously, and when you talk about Janny, you said you're going to treat us to a bit of what happens after. Obviously, you know me. I'm a romantic at heart. I want to know if Daliana and Lyser live happily ever after and have kids and breed some line of great rulers, right? So or if they don't manage to get together. So that's a big curiosity of mine. And then finally, I'd like to comment on the Korean thing that they had been these schemers for centuries, and to see the end, the way their order ended, was just mind-boggling, right? And we all know what happened in some of the previous books. They managed to survive in a shell of themselves, but then this much more definitive, kind of ending for their entire arc and a direction that I think really made an impression on me, because they're actually some of my favorite baddies were from the Korea thing. So those are some of the impressions from
You're talking about the big framework of the Fellowship's tremendous risk. When mankind arrived as refugees, they had a choice: send them on to probably a not good end, or give them the shot at integrating with what was already there, with the double-edged caveat that if you fail, you're going to have to wipe them out. So what you're seeing is what their master plan was just the evolution of the fourth race. And by letting in mankind and by honoring free will, they had to let in the potential that the Koryathan could tear it all down. So going back to Curse of the Mistwraith, now you understand what the grain of sand was that was grating with them, was they could have destroyed all of it. And the way that it became dismantled was the world itself sparked off that healing, and it was actually a Lara that brought through the Ryathan that started the cascade for the whole thing. So there's so many interconnected threads. But the Koryathan were one of the greatest risks because they were carrying the seed of necromancy. They brought in a lot of, and Athera being a high resonance world means whatever they could do with their quote magic was going to be more powerful. It had the potential to wrecking ball the entire plan. So here you got a plan. On one hand, you're not going to be a dictator. You're going to honor free will. Can you thread the eye? Can mankind thread the eye of the needle and make this happen? And then you got the Crone's agenda laid into the middle of it. And they couldn't control her either. So it's a lot of moving pieces, a lot.
But as Niko pointed out, so masterfully woven. I'm praying still. Frankly, I still hold out hope. I know it's a naive and ridiculous hope. I'm still praying that George R. R. Martin lives long enough and puts the effort into finishing A Song of Ice and Fire. In my video on why I'm sad about my top series of all time, one of the rules I made was that I couldn't consider incompleted series, so therefore it was disqualified, and I put it as an honorable mention. But one thing I'll say is that, when I look at A Song of Ice and Fire, I don't know how George R. R. Martin is going to tie together almost the impossible tentacles and the spread of those tentacles in a fashion that's going to be cohesive and satisfying. I mean, he's a genius writer, so I don't know
It
how
could be done.
it could be done. But Jenny, you
Here's
did
the
it
nice
though.
of insomnia.
Yeah.
You take the pickup sticks you've already got on the table, and you don't introduce any of new ones. You build on what's already there without sprawling it, and that's the trick. You can't. And the temptation to sprawl it because you get bored or you get, you think you're. It gets harder as you go forward because the low hanging fruit of the ideas gets plucked pretty early. How do you write the fifth tavern brawl in your career? So that kind of inventiveness, I think, takes tremendous focus and discipline and tremendous angst and tremendous just wringing your brain. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. It's easier to sprawl. Oh, just make a new character to make this exciting again, instead of taking an old character and exposing a facet that the reader never saw. Giving it more depth. It can be done, but it would take a tremendous amount of introspective work. And literally, God bless insomnia, because I lay awake night after night after night saying, I need exactly the scene that's going to expose exactly the right facet and give exactly the right tension that's going to lift this narrative to another level. And it all has to happen in a very concentrated space.
Well, Jenny, I think you've succeeded. Maybe you need to give George a call and offer some help, because I think you have exceeded expectations in that. And again, hats off to you. The level of craft and to do that with, and the emotional intelligence to realize that it couldn't be sprawling, and that you had to contain that and finish off these plot threads and these arcs in such an eminently satisfying manner. I mean, that is, again, it's a testament to how great a writer you are. So hats off that you stuck the landing, you brought it home, and you did that. So
it's 50 novels worth of invention. And so to finish something as widespread and sprawled as some of these unfinished series out there, how many years did it take me just to write Song of the Mysteries? 5 years. There was life experience happening on the side. My mother died. Things happened in my life. But nonetheless, you can't do this overnight. You can't do this at light speed. You can't do this without a lot of literally digging deeper into your soul, into your heart, into your creativity, to pull the maximum out.
So how long is it going to take you to finish A Song of Ice and Fire?
Come on, let's call George up. See, George, we got the person to finish.
No, right? I don't think. I got 14 other ideas I'd like to write first. So I did my collaboration with a male author. Done my part. I think it's time for me to shine on my own.
Yeah, and you collaborated on an internationally best-selling series. So imagine what you could do with George, right? So, but in all seriousness, Jenny, and I want to hear from Blaise.
Tell me this: if they pay me enough to end world hunger, I'd do it.
Well, I do want to hear from Blaise and Niko one more time, and I'd like to get some thoughts. And before we start to turn to, because Janny, this is a real treat for those of you who are here and who have read up to and including Song of the Mysteries. Janny's going to give us some post Song of the Mysteries Ethera history, what comes after. Now that you're not going to get that anywhere else. I think this is one of the most incredible things I've ever been part of. So I cannot wait. But first, before I get there, I know Niko had to step out for a bit. I'd like to hear from Blaise any final thoughts or comments about that you'd like to get across about Song of the Mystery, specifically about the entire series, questions for Janny, anything you want to say there.
Just a few more thoughts of when I was reading Song of the Mysteries that just really stuck out to me and that I was never expecting. The first one was I never expected the Corian thing to make a pact with the quote unquote like evil dragons who are not in the or against the dragons who wanted to compromise and work with the people already living on Athera. I did not expect that coming. And then the climax of what happened in that great battle scene, which you left hints of throughout the previous books, as to getting into that specific location, the well. That was just fantastic. And Lorenda, when she was looking through the histories of the Corianthe through the crystals, and going back and realizing what happened to mankind, who the Fellowship really were, and how that steamrolled into like just the climax. I just love that part. I've been begging for Janny to tell us, like, show us Coladas, like where is he and what does he know? So the scenes in the beginning when he was with Alara, showing her like all parts of like medicine and like tricks of healing and herbs and stuff like that. Those are some of my favorite scenes because I always wanted them throughout the series. But that was just great. And the final thing that just shook me was the creating of what happened with Ciantra, and her becoming a completely new race with what and that how that worked into the ending and the plot, especially the resolution with the dragons. I was never expecting that. And the final thing that just completely blew me away, because we saw hints of it, happened in the epilogue with the Cirrus dying and then Dakar not having his visions ever again. There was hints of it throughout the whole series that I just didn't see. And then rereading it, I started to see the hints as to what finally happened. But that realization, I was just blown away. So bravo to you for leaving those little Easter eggs.
Yeah, to the last line. The surprises in the last line.
The last line. So bravo.
Wow, all amazing stuff. I have to say, Blaise, those are fantastic points. I have to say that, I was wondering for a minute if Erathon and Ilaria, if they were not going to accede to the Praevian throne, because, there was a minute I wondered, right, would there be some other alternative there? So that really, 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 it's almost, you subvert expectations that, at the end, Erathon is going to be crowned king, but then no, he's not, because he doesn't want it. But then in the end, under certain auspices, he takes it on. So, there's so many things I could talk about, but again, and I do want to give Niko a chance when he comes back. But I think the biggest thing, and I know we're leading into this, is that, for me, when I reflect back on this series, you have two main characters that have lived these extended lives, and they've seen people pass while they've continued to live on. And, I'm extremely curious when Janny gives us some potential spoilers about what comes after Voice of Light and Shadow, how their lives end, what they do with, especially considering where they are. And Blaise in particular, I'm very curious about him and how he ends his life and in what capacity and fashion. I think with Erathon, there's much more of I can anticipate a path, but especially with Lysier, what happens with him. So, and a lot of the other characters, and and to the extent that the Fellowship have been this guiding influence, what they do. So there's a lot of questions that I'm hoping Janny's going to be able to give us a little snippets of, at least, in terms, I know she can't say everything, but what happens.
I can say quite a bit, because as I sat down and weighed, was I going to write any short fiction that goes futureward? At this point, maybe, but it'd be a diminishing return, because readers would have to read the whole series before they could get to that. Because nothing that I did futureward would constantly spoil the series. So I may end up just having published history outlines of what comes futureward, rather than write the actual. Now, possibly I could write the finish of Lysair and Daliana's lives, but even then that would spoil. There's nothing I could do. I will tell you that the development of the fourth race is going to be a very bumpy road because mankind is mankind. The religion of light is not going to just erase itself. There's going to be wars over that concept. So there will definitely be human turmoil that cascades forward. I will tell you that the Valerionian dynasty goes for a very long time. Arathon lives for thousands of years. If you look back in history, the dynastic succession were 3 generations of the Paravian high kingships or queenships. They went for a long, long time. It was a rare one that was short. The ones around the Mistrathe conquest were short, but they went for thousands of years. 5,000-6,000 years was common. And Arathon and Elara both are now standing on the same platform the Seven are, but without that binding. So they're pretty much free. So what we see going forward is mankind is going to be mankind. The Paravian kingship or queenship is the center of healing and the center of harmony. It is not a sovereignty. It is not. It's not an authority. It's not what you picture. So your high kings of man are going to continue to play their roles. I do know that the offspring Arathon leaves on the human side will not inherit or step up until a good few hundred years later. I know that the offspring of Siantra and Esfand become the Draken. It becomes yet another race, and they will go on to not only just act as liaison for the dragons beyond the gate, they will also tame the Kadrim, and they will ride the Kadrim. They will become not dragon riders because they aren't dragons, but they will tame and subdue the Kadrim and work in partnership with them. So that's coming down the line. So there's all kinds of crazy little bits of history. There is a back history where the Fellowship of Seven had an apprentice and it came to a bad end. It ended very badly. And that's why they're very reluctant to take anyone on. So that will be Dakar's job in the interim before he steps into Sethvir's shoes, which is not going to be quick either. He still has a lot of growing to do to be able to handle that one. So there's just a few little tidbits.
Oh my gosh, this is
incredible.
This is I'm speechless.
Yeah, the evolution of this world does not stop. It doesn't stop because there's the age of enlightenment that follows the age of redemption, which is the one we're in right now.
I'm speechless. I am praying, Janny, that maybe another 11-book series can be used to cover this. I
would have to have a stable platform off which to work, a stable fan base. Otherwise, I can't pay the bills. So what happens going forward? Everything depends on whether I can support it. Because honestly, I finished this series as a labor of love. I wasn't making ends meet. I was living off savings. I was living off other things. I was living off what the Empire was earning. I was living off translations of the Empire. So at this point, I really have to think about putting something firm under the foundations here because there's just nothing more to squeeze out of the sponge. So I'd love to continue. I'd like to see some epic poetry written of some of the prior ages where the people weren't on the world at all.
Wow.
And there's certainly, oh my God, the back history is just so incredibly, powerfully. The events that happened before humanity arrived on the planet were pretty stupendous. There's a lot of material, but whether there's a fan base to support that, I do have to think about paying the bills.
Well, Janny, I think we're on the right track in terms of that fan base, as you've alluded to at the beginning. I think you're seeing your series shoot back up into, again, the provenance that you so rightly deserve. And I think that momentum is only going to continue as people understand that this is one of the series that they need to read when they talk about the pantheon of iconic series, the Malazans and Wheel of Times, the Realm of the Unliving, etc. So I think we're on the upward trajectory. So
when you walk into the bookshop and you see the series fully represented, all the books up against next to the Martin and the Hob, that's the day that it will have arrived.
Well, we're going to keep working, doing our part, and I know you'll be doing your part. So hopefully people will be coming back to look at this because a lot more people are finishing the series, and they'll come to look for these insights directly from the author. And hopefully this will be an added value piece to as your series continues to ascend. I want to quickly put up the wonderful Palmer Pickering, a great author in her own right. Heliotrope, I believe, Blaise, you've read that as well.
Oh, Heliotrope's wonderful. And
Love
Palmer Pickering, you needed to miss this because if you haven't finished the series, you didn't want to get spoiled.
Yeah. So this is spoiler filled, Palmer. So if you haven't read the series, hey, it was so much appreciate you coming by. Check out Palmer's work, read her stuff. She's a brilliant author. But yeah, Palmer, if you haven't read the final book, then don't get spoiled because that's what we're talking about here.
We marked a spoiler, so you can blip off if you're coming on the reread.
Yeah. Janny, quickly, there is a question here by the wonderful Zero Zaku One. Again, Zero Zaku One, great support of the community. Thanks for coming by. We really appreciate you. Zero Zaku One asks, Janny, what are some series similar to yours from ages past that people should read or challenge themselves with?
Well, some of them I've recommended on to Blaise. One of them is The Masters by Ricardo Pinto. It's pretty dark.
Very dark.
It's very dark, but it's not dark without beauty. I don't go for dark without hope or dark without beauty. It just takes a concept and absolutely turns it upside down on its head. I would recommend Fortress in the Eye of Time by C.J. Cherryh. That's a pretty astounding series. In fact, everything C.J. Cherryh ever wrote was a pretty astounding series. I would recommend looking outside of fantasy. There's some extremely deep and powerful stuff outside of fantasy that's influenced authors in the fantasy field, left, right, and center, one being Dorothy Dunnett's historical novels. The style is going to be a challenge for many people. She's brilliant. She's a freaking genius. It will take focus to read her work, but that's certainly going to have the depth that you crave if you look for that. I enjoyed very much Adrian Karchovsky's Shadow of the Apt. I really liked Miles Cameron's The Red Knight. I would look at P.L. Stewart's Drowned Kingdom, absolutely, because flawed heroes are rare, and when they're done really, really well, few authors can pull off that masterful depth. So I would check out that one. There's a long, long list, but you're going to have to look in the corners because very often these are not going to be the things that roll down the center and don't fluff people's feathers the wrong way. They're going to be polarizing reads. So look for the polarizing reads.
Thank you, Janny. And Janny, I'm so humbled for you to mention my book.
Well, that's up there because it's a subject that comes to grips with the deeper, darker, and the more difficult side of humanity, and we're looking at conflicted times right now. We're polarizing times, and the polarizing books are going to grapple with that. And I'm not saying that an escape book isn't worthy. It is. Anything that will relieve stress without a drug, anything that will give you a timeout, anything that will give you a chance to escape the pressures of this world. But the rare book that will grapple with it and also bring humor and bring illumination and bring light to a situation that can feel very dark and can flip it. I mean, when you look at it, we live in a world where we say everything is entropic. It's not entropic because there is no ending to consciousness. It goes forever. What is entropic, what makes something entropic is when you start eliminating what is possible. You say, this is too dark. I won't deal with that, or I won't admit it can exist. Where you start eliminating and you start saying moralistically, we can't have any of this. in order to have a non-entropic conscious experience, you have to admit all of it and pick and choose which experiences that you want out of that. You craft the experience that you want to learn from. But entropy only happens when you remove a piece of the puzzle. And in order to have full choice, unrestricted choice, you have to have unrestricted reality. You have to have an unrestricted universe, and that's what we have. That's what we're given. And it's up to us to navigate and pick and choose what experience to take out of that and to shape out of that, and how we express the love that we were given, which is the permission to create. So are you finding joy? Are you causing joy? Or are you tearing that apart? Because in order for the high point to be possible, you have to admit the opposite.
Some more words of wisdom from the wonderful Janny Wurts. I quickly want to put up that Palmer Pickering set up. How good to know she is on Fugitive Prince, Janny. So she's getting there. So glad that hopefully you weren't spoiled, Palmer, that we didn't get anything in the last few minutes that you heard that was in spoiler territory for the end of the series. Again, in a way, I'm sure Blaise feels the same, and Niko, who just stepped out. As Niko said, and as Blaise had said, and as I've echoed, and as Janny herself pointed out to you, this series is so imminently rereadable, and the things you will discover, it's almost, this is a series that was almost written in which you must reread it several times to pick up on all the nuances you missed the first time, to pick up on all the things that you simply weren't looking for, you weren't aware of, that, after you finish the series, you can go back and just delight and joy in almost, a new unveiling. And, as I said, I kind of started a soft reread myself, and it's just been a joy, right? But at the same time, I almost feel jealous of the people. I mean, there's so many people right now starting their Wars of Light and Shadow journey, or part way, such as the Pickerings, the Palmer Pickerings. And, I don't know, Blaise, feel the same way. It's that feeling of, if I could go back in time and understand what I was reading at the time and capture that feeling of, oh my gosh, I've just crossed over this precipice into history, that I'm reading this historically significant series, and wow, it's just blowing me away with every book. I mean, when you listen to, all the people out there in the booktube community that are reading Wars of Light and Shadow or other books from Janny right now.
Yeah, we're all going to have to buy duct tape for our mouths for 2 years.
It'll be worth it.
Yeah, it'll be worth it. People message me all the time and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe, PL, you've been singing about this series to me for so long, and I'm finally reading it. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I was like, yeah, I wasn't, I know it's different because reading is subjective. Everybody likes what they likes. But, for the people, for the Blaises and myself and the Nikos and the Chipapos and all the people that have been trumpeting about this series over the last while, when people finally crack it open, they understand they don't need any more words, right? Those words become moot because they understand for themselves just how incredible it is. And it is such a joy to see those people, their expressions, they can't contain themselves about how amazing it is to read these books. And it just warms my heart, but it is that jealousy. Like, I wish I could go back, and it'll always be amazing to be just recap. If I had known what I was getting myself into when Blaise first recommended the series to me, wow, I would have just slowed down even more. I hope to think that looking back in retrospect, I would have slowed down even more to try and savor, reading it for the first time. But, I don't regret anything.
You'll do fine, because reading it for the second time or the third time or the fourth time, it becomes, the contour of the tension becomes different. The contour of what drives it, when you know what you're seeing in its entirety, becomes different. And with your life experience, it's going to become different again and different again. So there's always going to be something that's going to strike you in a different way, because your perspective as you go through life is going to change. Your perspective as a human being that's evolving is going to change. So I set out at the beginning to take the structure of classic fantasy and use that as the framework to tell the story I wanted to tell. And it was designed start to finish to be reread multiple times and to become timeless. The style was designed to be timeless. It's not attached to any fans or any themes that are current. It's not attached to whatever fancy society is just chosen to play with. It is universal in that way. I strove my utmost to make it that way and hopefully have come close to succeeding.
Oh, Janny, you've blown that away. You have created something that is simply put a masterpiece. That is a piece of, and let's go beyond fantasy and that genre or any subgenres you want to categorize it in. You've created a piece of literature that, again, is as Chibuko said, is transcendental, right? It goes to another level. It is seized to another platform, and I think, again, I am very cognizant of the historical significance of being able to read an advanced reading copy of this finale and being able to, be someone who knows you and can talk to you about your work and get insights from the author directly. That Blaise and myself and Niko, we have that privilege. We know it's a privilege, and to feel like you're part of history, seeing this unfold. And the story it isn't finished. It is not. And we're hearing from you now that story is not yet finished, and that news.
Well, the history continues, and there are themes in there that I don't think people are quite ready to encompass yet. That our evolution as human beings on this planet are quite ready to encompass yet, or at least not the society in the West. And one of them is that leadership is not singular. Real leadership would be collaborative because no one person has all the qualities to be the hero in the right moment at the right time. It would take maybe a circle of 12 gifted people to truly lead in a balanced fashion, because as I tried to demonstrate with Sabridian, what's a heroic quality in one moment can be the downfall in the next. And no one person, we expect too much of our leaders. We expect too much of somebody who's in the bully pulpit. And no one person can encompass all of that. It takes probably 12 incredibly virtuous qualities, and no one has all them. You might be strong in one area or two, but you're not going to have the full picture. So I would love to see a society in which leadership did become collaborative, where you say, this guy's the peacekeeper. You sure don't want Patton sitting in the peacekeeping seat. But if you're going up against Nazi Germany, he's exactly the man for the job. So I wish that the concept of a non-hierarchical leadership could evolve. And that's in this book. But I don't think many readers are equipped to see that just yet.
Well, Janny, I know for speaking for myself, Blaise and Niko, and a lot of the people who are your fans, I think we're ready to see your perhaps, more versions of how that could work.
Look how the Fellowship runs. Look how the Fellowship of Seven runs. Look how the Moravian Council runs, which you haven't seen too much of, but maybe someday I'll write something to do with that.
And wow, we cannot wait. I want to quickly say a shout out to Shane Boyce. Shane, thanks so much for coming by and saying hello. Shane, wonderful member of the community, writes some incredible reviews. Great, upstanding person. And thanks so much, Shane, for stopping by and checking this out. I don't think Shane has read. I think he may or may not have been starting Wars of Light and Shadow and/or some of your work, Janny. I think there was a post recently that he was. So, Shane, we are talking about spoilers here. If you haven't read up until including the series, just beware. But I think we're pretty well into some more general topics now. But at the same time, this is about Song of the Mysteries, and we're covering material that could potentially spoil you. And of course, this is one of the greatest series of all time, and you don't want to get spoiled. So just giving you that warning, my friend Shane. So, but we do so much appreciate you stopping by.
So yeah, Shane, drop me a DM if you want.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
If I don't follow you, point yourself out to me so that I can see you.
There you go, Shane.
My DMs are closed to people I don't follow. So If somebody needs to flag me, they need to introduce themselves and at me, and I'll see it.
And there you go. Just knowing how incredibly wonderful Janny is, how accessible. So someone who's an iconic author, someone who supports authors, booktubers, everyone in the community to the extent that she does. It is just astounding. So, and that's just an example. So, but once again, Shane, thanks so much for popping in. Niko is back. Oh, and Shane says, "I will. I'm excited to start the journey," and he says, "Thank you." So, Shane, you are in for the treat of your life. That's all. That's all I'm going to say. Welcome back to Niko. Niko, we had gotten into while you were gone. Janny had given us a little bit of a taste of what the future may hold for Athera. Obviously you're going to catch that in the replay. But just before we start to wind things down, any more final impressions, things you'd like to say, comments about the series, about specifically Song of the Mysteries, anything else you'd like to get in there, and give you the floor for a while because I know you had to run off and take care of things with the family.
Yes, I will definitely be checking back on the live. I'm always excited for the new things. That's a great segue because actually what I was going to say right before. The other thing that I feel like I didn't think about a lot during the series, but I like the beginning and the end, because the beginning does tell you that this is being told from the group. They, the sages, they're reading the strands, they're reading the past and looking back and telling the story of what happened. And it's sort of like it's in defense of, Erathon. And at the end too, they kind of like take what you will. But I liked that too, because it's interesting because that itself gives you a little bit of a glimpse into the future. And there are comments too where I also like, because I feel like the Fellowship gets it wrong again toward the end. They make a comment with like, oh, the canon doctrine, once they don't have a savior anymore, they don't have Lysair, it'll fall off, it'll be fine. But I think the fact that however far in the future that's happening this is still very much a thing, and Erathon, the Master of Shadow, is still looked at as being very maligned. Like we know that that maybe didn't fall off quite the way that they thought it might, but kind of the comments too about how this is like the reveal of Erathon becoming king of the Pravians instead, and that kind of thing. We're like, that he seemed to disappear around the time that happened, and just I like those little things too. That's just kind of seeing that glimpse into history, and it just gives you so much to think about as well, as to what might happen in the world with a very different. The Pravians are back, but then you have Erathon kind of in charge there. No more Coriathane, and just the Fellowship very different now as well too, with there being other powers and everything. So I just like those little things as well. With it, and just how there's so much with like all the different characters as well. And I feel like the ending was happier than I would have expected, to be perfectly honest, but it was so fitting. Because like if anybody deserved the ending that Erathon got, it was absolutely Erathon. He deserves everything in the world after what he went through in these books. So I loved that ending. But then Lysair as well, like you talked about too, in Rockfelt was phenomenal. Those scenes and just kind of seeing his end, which is not at all what you would have expected for him either, but it fit, and it felt right, and that was where it just every bit of the ending, it felt right, it felt earned, and was just wonderful.
One thing that I could point out on the 7, they are fallible. You see them make mistakes. They still have a bit of that humanity left, even though they are what they are. But you also have to look at how old they are.
Yeah.
The Second Age went on for 18,000 years, and the start of the Second Age was the arrival of the Fellowship. Now that we got 5,500 stacked on top of that, almost 6. They've been around a long time. So when they say the religion's going to fall apart, don't worry, there's nothing to support it. What time frame are they talking about?
That's fair.
That's don't. I mean, you would assume, it's going to happen tomorrow. No, it won't happen tomorrow. It'll be rather messy, in fact. It won't be the first time that they have to step up. But the time frame that they're looking at, when you're talking beings that have been at work on this project for close to 20,000 years, beyond 20,000 years, what's a few centuries or a few hundred or another couple of millennia or 5,000 millennia or how many millennia to them? It's a nothing. It's a nothing.
Well, I have to say, and again, as we're winding down here, that, I feel, Janny, that, because now, I think Niko and Blaise expressed as well, we're all excited to read that book that perhaps can top Song of the Mysteries, can top your series. But I can tell you that I think that's going to be a gargantuan task for almost any author that I read now, especially when, and I'm not as well read as Niko or Blaise. However, now I'm getting to that point where those so-called, that pantheon of great authors that a lot of people hold up, the Ericksons and the Hobbes and the Martins, etc., you're getting to that point where you're starting to read more and more of them and knock them off. And they are incredible authors all in their own right. So I say nothing to denigrate them or take away from them. However, the landscape that I'm looking at with, hopefully, God willing, another 30ish plus years on this earth, I feel I'll be hard pressed to find something else that's going to top this as my number one offense series. Never say never, as Niko said, and we're all looking for that series. But Jenny, I can tell you right now, it has, your series, this book has made such an impact on me, and I am so grateful that it is my top series, that I've actually read it. Imagine reading this in my 50s. And thank you for writing it. I thank you for all you do for us and all you've done to allow us to share this experience with you, and the highs and the lows, and we feel very blessed.
It doesn't have to be a hierarchy. Somebody else is going to write a fabulous series and it's going to be as good for a different reason. We don't have to keep stacking things. It's part of the problem with humanity is, we're constantly saying hierarchy, or this society, because other societies don't do that. And that's why you never hear me say this was the best book I ever read. I have 100 best books I ever read, and they're all cherished for a different reason. And yeah, when you get a book that hits that top circle, there's going to be more than one. And I hope there will be many.
No, we do well said, Jenny.
But one of the things to think about going forward is what we're doing to the creative arts, because it takes a lifetime of skill, it takes a lifetime of development, it takes a lifetime of focus to create a work that's a long form epic. And it takes an incredible amount of support from a publisher, which publishers are becoming increasingly less willing to do except once in a generation, because to launch something as big as a Hobb or a Martin or a Jordan, I know the behind the scenes what those launches took, even a Rothfuss. And it isn't simple. It isn't a simple case of fling it out there and the cream will rise. So you're not going to see that kind of effort put forward but once in a generation. And those that are chosen for that effort, it's going to be almost handpicked. And then it takes luck to sustain it, because you have to finish it. You have to survive the changes. And our world is shifting so fast. Now we're contending with AI. We're contending with so many factors. And the ability to devote a lifetime to a creative work is becoming vanishing slim with the cost of living and so on. So I hope we see the opportunity for the next generations coming up to repeat this.
Well, Jenny, we know that you'll be there to help inspire that future generation with your work and your sage counsel and your motivation and your energy and your positivity and everything else you bring to being a human being that is on top of being one of the greatest writers I've ever read, one of the greatest artists I've ever. We didn't even get a chance to speak about your talent as artistically as a painter, etc. And of course, your wonderful husband, who is, again, both of you world-class painters. But because this was a Song of Mysteries chat, but as we wind down, I'm going to give all of you, some final sign-offs. I would ask as a favor, if, especially for Janny, you can talk again about where to find your works, or what you want to hint about what's coming out next, if there's something you want to boost. For Blaise and Niko, of course, your wonderful booktube channels, and where people can find all three of you on social media. And I'll give maybe Blaise and then Niko and then have Janny wind it down.
Well, first, before I do that, thank you, PL, for hosting this. It's been many months in the making, and something I was looking forward to for a long time. So thank you for that. I'm Under the Radar SFF Books. I'm at Under the Radar B2 on Twitter. I also have a podcast, which is a little bit on hiatus, but looking to kick up in the next few weeks or so. This series really changed the way I will forever view literature, how will forever view fantasy books and science fiction books going forward. And Janny's like prose and the way that she just goes about explaining a scene and how beautiful certain words and certain expressions are. It made me realize like every single word matters, and the way things are conveyed matter. And no other author has ever made me feel that way. So, and it's maybe not at first in Curse of the Mistwraith, because I was the first time reading, I was confused. I didn't know exactly everything that was going on. But Ships of Merrier was the book that made me realize that this series was special. I'll forever love that book, and I'll forever go back and read it. And setting on the course where 11 books in over a 2-year period of reading them, it changed my life, especially now with my family growing, my daughter. I will forever look on these books in a new light, because as things change in your life, this series will also change for you. And no other series I've ever read has done that for me. So just wanted to thank you again, Janny, for opening up the door for my evolution as a reader. And for all of you who are just starting your journey, you have no idea what is about in store, and you'll forever be changed by it.
Did you pick up the graduation in the style?
Yes.
Mistwraith starts simpler, and Ships is where it really hits stride. That was deliberate. It was deliberate so that the reader could immerse to the degree they had to slowly. And in fact, the style graduates all the way to the final book, where it's very, very, very condensed what's going on. So yeah, the style was tailored to have people step into it. So Curse of the Mistwraith's prose is not quite as challenging at the start, at the ground floor, but by the time you hit the finishing scenes, it gets thicker, it gets deeper, because by then your brain is adjusted to the level of detail that's being portrayed on the page. So for readers just starting in, this style isn't going to challenge you terribly hard at first. It's going to graduate slowly. That was done absolutely by design.
And how wonderful it is. How wonderful it is. Niko, parting words, including where to find you, socials, anything you'd like to say.
Yeah, well, I'm Niko's Book Reviews. Name I got here. I'm on YouTube. I talk about books a lot of times, older books that people don't talk about as much anymore. That's my life goal is to read all the quote unquote great fantasy series, which is a list that's ever growing as I find more and more and more. And with I never know what quite that's going to mean, but it's a journey that I've enjoyed, and the experience here with not only reading this series, like finding this at the absolute perfect time. That I feel like I was at the perfect time in my life where my taste had really started to change, and I'm more and more. I didn't quite know what I was looking for until I found this series and realized this was it. And getting to go through to talk through each book with this wonderful group, and having Janny be able to talk through with you, it's just been never an experience that I've had with the series like at all, let alone one that's become so close to me. Blaise totally stole saying what I was going to say, because I say that all the time with Curse. I'm like, hey, this Curse was really good and I enjoyed it, but I didn't quite realize how special it was until Ships of Merrier as well. And after reading that book, I didn't know if I wanted to reread it or if I wanted to continue to book 3 more, because that was where I fell in love. But you guys did say art, and I realized I covered up a Don Mates to put this year with Magician over there. But We got the Trader's Not icon here as well. But yeah, this has just been an amazing experience to go through. And it's just, yeah, the books are, it's when you find a series that's everything you didn't know you were looking for but were, it's such an amazing time. And as I've continued to just evolve and find more things, and it's really made me hone my taste even more and just find more things that I enjoy. So while I can definitely agree with the ideas of like, oh, in a way it's just like nothing is going to compare to it, but at the same time it's raised the bar for me, and it makes it exciting to go find better and better things, and and just like really keep looking to see what else can I find, because this has really shown me what's out there, and by just trying to read and pick up. And I am still forever grateful that my local used bookstore had a omnibus of Cycle of Fire with the amazing art that just made me think, oh, that looks really cool, let's grab this book I've never heard of, because that was just that my start to reading that, to finding everything, and reading the series it's been a heck of a ride. And I mean, I did literally name my daughter, who was born this year, Alara, so have a lifelong impact on me in that way as well too.
Well, if she ever dates an Arathon, the world is saved.
Wow, and so it just goes to show you what kind of an impact that Janny had on Niko. Yes, and for all of us. So Janny, we'll turn over to you before I wind things down here. Anything you'd like to say, Janny? Final words.
First of all, I'm the only Janny Wurts in the world that spells my name this way, so I'm easy to find. You can find me on Blue Sky. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Goodreads. You can find me on, I think I have an account on Library Thing, but I haven't signed in there in 100 years. And I have a forum also on my website, so I can be found there, and questions can be directed to me. I'll always answer them if it's not a spoiler. For a closing remark, I'll say two things. One is that one of the biggest challenge writing this series was to write a fantasy hero where Tolkien forward fantasy embraces violence. It embraces the war as the solution, and to write a character that transcends killing. So if you look at it, from the moment Arathon steps out of that maze, he never kills again. And I think that's one of the most powerful statements in a field that seems to revel in the dark side and the bloodshed, was to write a hero through that. And people often say, oh, all the same things keep happening. No, it's because this character will not kill ever again. And so that one point, if I succeeded in creating a series that accomplished that, where killing and war was not the solution, I'm happy. The second closing remark I'll have is, if you have a dream to do something like this, do it anyway. Find a way to do it anyway. Find a way to make your day job not the important thing in your life, so that the greater energy that you have can be put into fulfilling that dream. Do it anyway. And don't let anything stop you. Don't let your teachers, don't let your parents, don't let the naysayers, don't let the doom and gloomers, don't let the end of the worlders, don't let the sun's not going to rise tomorrow and everything's going to go to shit. They're full of it. Don't give up your hopes. Make them happen. Because from where I'm sitting right now, it was worth every single sacrifice and every single rough moment and every single 2-penny lecture. If you don't do this, nobody else can. So if I can leave that example to have you make your mark on this world, do it. I've accomplished my job.
And then some, Janny. And you're an inspiration to us all. We love you. We love your writing. Quickly, I'm going to say about The Wars of Light and Shadow and all of Janny's work that I've read so far, and Janny as an author. I've read series that have everything. There's some series that I can literally say have everything. They have world building, they have compelling themes, they have great writing, they have great storytelling, they have every component that you could typically want in a fantasy book. But Janny has them all too, and she has them in spades. But on top of that, I will say, again, and I know it's been articulated already here by the esteemed Blaise and the esteemed Niko, that no one writes like Janny Wurts, and I will specifically talk about prose because there is no other prose that will ever, as far as I can foresee, in however long the Lord leaves me on this earth, that is going to surpass Janny's prose for me. I think that's the one thing that definitely sets her apart from so many writers, and I think that stood the test of time. And I think if you are looking for something that has all those other components in spades at the highest level that you can think of in the fantasy, the world building, the themes, and everything else, if you're looking for yes, transcendental fantasy, as Triple said, but specifically for me, transcendental prose, this is the author for you, Janny Wurts. And that prose is the vehicle for you to embark on a journey that's going to change your life, because it certainly changed mine. Thank you, Janny, for being you and for writing this series. It is miraculous. Quickly, everyone who came by in the chat, thank you so much for coming out to support Janny. Hope you weren't spoiled. For all of those who are continuing their journey or starting in Wars of Light and Shadow, you're in for the ride of your life. Please continue, stick with it, and you will definitely be rewarded. And come back and watch this later after you've finished the last book. For all of you who are going to watch the replay, thank you so much again for supporting Janny and, of course, the channel. You're what makes this kind of long-form content amazing. And how often, as for me, as just a fan, do I get to sit down with two incredible bloggers, people whose opinion I so respect, and on top of that, the author of my favorite fantasy series of all time. That's a big treat. Quickly on P.L. Stewart, Dragon Kingdom Saga. That's the channel. The books are the Dragon Kingdom Saga. 4 books out right now. The 5th book, A Pack of Wolves, is coming in the spring of 2025. Website, plstewart.com. The books, everywhere you buy them on the Ingram Network, Amazon, etc. And I am, like Niko and Blaise, one of the biggest Janny Wurts fans. And I am so looking forward to continuing my journey, reading everything that she writes as long as she wants to write it. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you for your support for Janny and her work. And again, this book is part of a life-changing series. And I can't wait to see what you do next, Janny, especially in the world of Thera. So thank you. And everyone else, have a good night. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.